Well, some traders saying that detail is what the market is looking for, and until this emerges on all fronts, the kind of trade where it's marginally up or marginally lower is to be expected moving forward. What's your view on the Nigerian markets right now?
Morning. I think you're right that there's no real trend in the market at the moment. You saw things like Nigerian breweries and Nestle moving up basically because they announced the dividends, and so they attracted some investors to come in. On corn oil and AP, following the trend that started yesterday, and those two have moved up positively as the oil and gas index has increased as well. I think that's backed on imminent deregulation as expected, as well as the ongoing oil and gas conference that's happening in Abuja this week.
Does it come as a surprise, Kayode, sorry to interrupt, that these oil players are seeing the renewed interest that they're seeing at the moment, given the fact that, yes, while reforms are currently underway, there's still a lot of uncertainty concerning reforms to take place in both the oil and gas space?
There's a lot of uncertainty in the upstream sector because the PIB bill, it has far-reaching reforms planned for the upstream sector. Corn oil and AP are really big players in the downstream sector rather than the upstream. They have some upstream assets, but not as much as most of the oil majors in that sector. I think what is expected is that with deregulation expected in the downstream sector, which is separate from PIB, those firms will do well as market prices will be used to gauge the price of fuel. And the inefficient subsidy system that's currently in place will no longer be in play, and delayed subsidy payments and other issues that have affected downstream players will no longer be an issue going forward. I think that's what's attracting the market.
Okay, so that's some clarity on that front. In the meantime, we've come across some reports saying that the leadership of the country's banks are rethinking legitimate devices to achieve impressive fourth quarter results for the year 2009, as they come, of course, under increasing pressure from the investing public to give better accounts of their stewardship. What are some of the expectations in your books around fourth quarter numbers out of the banking space?
I think fourth quarter numbers will be quite subdued. Banks, there's been a bit of a credit crunch in the Nigerian market. Banks have not been lending. So the only interest income they'll receive from lending activities are from existing loans that have been performing. There have been very few new lending in the market. So we're not expecting to see any growth there. Rather, because of the retrenchment in the credit and in actual loans being given out and some banks in their asset books, there might be a decrease in earnings that way. There might be some provisioning as well. There was heavy provisioning in the third quarter last year, but some people expect with the current state of the stock market, some provisioning to be continued for certain banks. But I think it will be a stabilizing, the fourth quarter results will be a stabilizing effect, and hopefully by second half of 2010, we'll start seeing some growth in income figures.
Well, pretty conflicting signals from the capital market, making projection of any year-end performances pretty tricky. At the same time, we've heard the Central Bank of Nigeria saying that it expects its exposure to troubled banks to be repaid over the next 3 months. Do you see troubled banks being able to meet that commitment, given the fact that there's so much reliance on the formation of the asset management company in that regard?
Yes, I think the CBN in making that announcement are hoping that the AMC will be in effect by then, and some of the toxic assets will be taken off some of the bank's balance sheets. But I also think the Nigerian banking sector is actually very liquid at the moment. There are a lot of quantitative easing measures have been put in place by CBN, as well as a lot of liquidity from, for example, last week, $2 billion from the excess crude account was released to the three tiers of government. A lot of that money found themselves in the banking system. And most of the banks are very liquid. That's why interbank lending has dropped to very low figures, because a lot of the banks don't need to lend from each other anymore. And there's one choice. If AMC is not put in place by May, another choice of the banks is that use some of that liquidity to pay off what they owe to CBN, but that would not be a smart move. The AMC needs to be in place, and some of these tax assets taken out, and then the banks will be on a solid footing to be able to grow going forward.